Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left.
This passage is part of Jesus' famous Olivet Discourse, which he gave to his disciples on the Mount of Olives, discussing the end times and answering his disciples when they asked him, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Now, I understand that many believe the rapture is not referenced in Jesus' discourse in Matthew 24 and is focused in part on his second coming. But while I was reading this passage, I believe the Lord may have revealed something to me that I had not noticed before, and I'll get into that. But first, let's read this passage in context. "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." First, we see that this event will be imminent, meaning there is nothing that precedes it to give us warning. This cannot be the case with Jesus' second coming because we know that there are several major events that will precede it, including the 7-year tribulation. The rapture, however, which Paul described as our blessed hope, makes much more sense, and I'll show you why. We know that whatever this event will be like the days of Noah, which fits perfectly with an imminent event whose time is unknown. This can't be the case with the second coming, as I just mentioned, and if we look closer at the story of Noah, we see a couple of things that support this claim. First of all, God saved Noah from judgment by taking him off the earth, placing him in the ark which is a prophetic picture of Christ, and taking Noah up to the heavens while the earth perished below. Let me show you. Genesis chapter 7 verse 17 says, "The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth." You see, just as God brought Noah up into the heavens, so will he also take up his believers away from the earth during his time of judgment to be with him. Not to mention, God commanded Noah to enter the ark 7 days before the flood came and wiped the world away. That 7 days that Noah and his family spent in the ark, I believe, represents the 7-year tribulation period where the church will be brought into the presence of Christ while the world endures the wrath of God below. So if we look back at the men in the field and the women grinding at the mill, I believe they are taken to be with Christ. This to me makes much more sense than the alternative meaning that the quote taken in this passage are taken away to judgment at the second coming, and those left behind enter into the millennial kingdom. I don't believe this is the case. For one, it should be noted that the Greek word used in this passage for taken is para lambano, which is made up of the root word lambano, meaning to take or receive, and the preposition para, which means alongside of. Therefore, the meaning of the verb is to take into close association with, to take to oneself, to take along with. We actually see Jesus use this same term in John chapter 14 verse 3, where he's also speaking of the rapture. He says, "I will come again and receive you to myself." Meanwhile, the verb aphiate from the Greek word aphieme, used to describe those who are left behind in the passage, often means abandon or forsake. Matthew uses it that way more than a half dozen times. Now, when it has a positive nuance, it takes on the technical meaning of forgive, usually of sins, but also of debt, as you can see. But there is no mention of sins or debt in conjunction with aphieme in this context, so it's hard to see how Matthew could be referring to those being left in a positive way, meaning he is referring to those as left behind as being abandoned or forsaken, implying that those left behind are left for judgment. Now, I can hear the critics saying that this passage cannot be talking about the rapture because it had not been revealed to Paul yet when he mentioned it decades later in his epistles to the church. But they miss an important point. Jesus had to have known of the rapture, which is the moment the church is resurrected and believers receive glorified bodies, because he was not only the first fruits of the resurrection, but his teaching centered around the resurrection. He became the firstborn among the dead when he received his glorified body at his resurrection, and he too had to have known that we would need to receive glorified bodies before we entered into the presence of God. Therefore, he must have known about the rapture. He even said, Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. Jesus may not have known the day or the hour at that point in his ministry, but he certainly knew about an eventual rapture of his bride. But I want to look at something else that stood out to me when I was reading this passage. Arguments on both sides focus on the words used for taken and left and what these words actually mean, but let's instead focus somewhere else in this passage. Notice what the women and the men are doing in each of the phrases. The men are in the field and the women are grinding at the mill. What do they both have in common? They're working. What do those who have been taken have in common? They are no longer working. Hence, they are at rest, meaning they have been taken or received unto the Lord and are no longer at work, but have joined the Lord in that final rest that our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, promised. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. Take care and God bless.